kind of famous. My first indication that my life would never be the same again came just as we were leaving the hospital. Instead of going out the main entrance, we had to go through this maze of hallways and sneak out a back door. There were hospital security guards with us, and when we got to our car, there were 2 Kauai policemen who followed us to a house in Nanahola where I could continue to recover in privacy. My parents explained to me that there was a mob of TV people eagerly waiting to shove microphones in my face. Mom, in particular, didn't like this intrusion into our lives. She just wanted me to get better and not be burdened with a million questions. She was being a mom, protecting her daughter, and honestly, I really don't enjoy being in the spotlight. It's a really strange feeling, kind of like living in a fishbowl. Nowadays, everywhere I go, people call my name or come up to me. I'm a celebrity of sorts, but I don't feel very comfortable with it, even though I made the choice to put myself out there. I could have kept quiet after the attack and no one would be watching me on TV. Sometimes you make a choice and you don't understand exactly everything that goes with it. This choice is what happened when, sitting with my family and a few close friends at the beach house in Anahola, I decided I would be willing to go on TV and tell my story, especially if I could be free to talk about how my faith in Christ helped me. At the time, things were happening very fast. I was more or less being myself in a few interviews that I gave, and that included expressing my belief that God has a plan for me. My mom was a little worried that the media exposure might be too much to handle, not just for me, but for all of us. I'm okay with doing these interviews if you guys think that God can use me, I told her. My parents pretty much left the decision up to me. If I had wanted to just hide out, they would have been okay with that. And even now, I think that if I decided that I don't ever want to do another interview again in my whole life, they would be fine with that too. Coming to this decision was pretty easy, of course. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. Here's the thing. A shark story fascinates people. I have to admit, before I was attacked, I liked to watch programs about sharks and all the Jaws movies. I don't anymore. People tend to ask me the same kinds of questions. Did it hurt? Not really. What were you thinking? Get to the beach, quick. Did you see the shark? Not very well. And most of all, are you afraid to go back in the water? Not really, but every once in a while I get creeped out. I try not to make a big soap opera out of the shark attack. I would rather focus on what God has allowed me to do in picking up the pieces of my old life and adjusting to parts that are new and different for me. Most of all, I want to use my story as a way to tell people about God's story. It seems like He has given me the attention of the world for a moment, and I had better take advantage of it while I can. I get stacks and stacks of mail. When the story first broke in the news, I would get hundreds of letters a week. I try to read as many of the letters as I can, but there's no way I could ever write back. I would be busy 24/7 just doing that. But as my family and I talked about the opportunities for me to tell people about my faith, we decided we needed help coping with all the media craziness that was sure to follow. So we called some friends of ours from Kauai who were agents and asked them to be our guide and our buffer. The first TV show that I was on was 2020. Whoa, pretty major. It took hours and hours of film, and all that was on television was about 10 minutes of stuff. Chris Cuomo was the guy who flew over to interview me and asked me all kinds of questions. Where were you? What were you doing? How did it feel? Were you scared? And a whole bunch more. So many that, to be honest, I started to get annoyed. I felt like I was being interrogated. After that, I had lots of phone interviews and told my story a million times, or at least it felt like that. By the second week of November, I had been interviewed by Inside Edition, Life Magazine, Sports Illustrated, The Early Show, Good Morning America, The Today Show, and CNN Live. I was everyone's favorite interviewee. Pretty much everyone asked the same thing, so I got pretty good at telling my story. Just one problem. It started to get a little boring and even at times frustrating because I was so sick of talking about me. Not every interview was torture. One phoner I did was with a guy who won the Pipeline Masters contest a long time ago. His name is Joey Baran, and he still surfs but is also a pastor in California. It was cool talking to him because in a lot of ways he really understood me. I think that's the biggest problem with these reporters. They have a hard time asking the right questions because they don't really get what I do or why I do it. So even if they do all their homework, it's still really hard for them to relate to me or me to them. It's like we're talking two different languages. Do celebs ever get to sleep? A few months after my attack, I went traveling around doing interviews on television shows. I was on a show in Los Angeles and then went flying off to do a bunch more in New York City. We arrived around 10 p.m., and I wasn't feeling good the whole time. I had a pretty high fever. Everyone who went with me got sick too. We landed at JFK Airport during a snowstorm. The airport was filled with angry people who had been grounded by the blizzard or who couldn't get a taxi to their destination. Me? I'd never seen snow before, so I was really psyched. We decided to visit relatives in New Jersey, so we rented a car and started driving south. Along the way, we pulled off at a restaurant. It was snowing like crazy, and my dad started heaving snowballs at me, which wasn't fair because I didn't know how to make them with only one hand. It didn't take long to figure it out, though. I think he did it to give me the challenge. He knows I never back down from a challenge. When we got to New York City, I went from one interview to the next. I was a guest on MTV announcing what videos were coming up next. I read what I was supposed to say off a big sign someone was holding. I hope it didn't come off sounding dumb. At the hotel, they pick you up to take you to the television show in a limousine. People think that a limo is a really cool kind of car, but now that I've been in them, I think they're way too showy. Honestly, I prefer my old beater back at home, to a stretch, any day. I'd never been in a TV studio before. They all have a green room, which cracks me up because 9 out of 10 times it's not really green. So why do they call it that? Would someone tell me? These are places where guests on TV shows wait until they are called. The rooms are usually full of food and drinks, anything and everything you could imagine, plus a TV to watch the show in progress. The whole TV studio process is kind of interesting. When you watch TV, you only see a host and their guests, but in reality, there are lots and lots of people all around. Some shows with audiences even have signs that tell people when to clap. At first, it's very nerve-wracking to have all these big cameras pointing at you. They do your hair and makeup, and then you get out there and they shine big lights on you and hang a microphone over your head. At first, I was totally distracted, but after a few times, I got used to it. You kind of have to tune it all out and just focus on the conversation and the questions being hurled at you. A director makes sure that everything runs on time and the host is getting signals about how much time is left, but is able to coolly keep a conversation going without freaking out as the clock ticks down. Some TV shows are taped, edited, and then run at a later date. In this case, like when I was on 2020 and Inside Edition, they film a whole bunch of stuff but only show a tiny bit. They don't ask you what to leave in or take out, so you kind of cross your fingers and hope for the best. When my friends ask me what the best thing about going to New York was, I always say there were 2 things that stand out for me. The snow and everything that goes with it, ice skating and making snowmen and throwing snowballs. The free all-you-could-eat sweet wild orange tea they gave me at the Sheraton Towers. That's it. I guess you could say I wasn't all that impressed by the big city. There were lots of homeless people in New York, and that made me really sad. The guys on MTV had me go on some kind of spending spree, but there wasn't really anything that I was interested in buying at the overpriced shops there. So while we were doing this, I passed a lady sitting on a steaming sewer grate to keep warm. I felt sorry for her and tried to help by giving her some of our lunch and a little bit of money. The people I was with acted like it was some kind of big deal. It's not. I think it's simply what Jesus meant when he said, "When you do good things to the least of these, you do it to me." It amazes me that so many people in New York can just walk by a stranger who is cold and sick on the street and not even look them in the eye. I can't do that. I can't turn away from someone in need, not when just a little kindness can go so far. I'm on Oprah. A lot of people were nice to us. Peter Jennings let my whole family hang out in his office, even though I didn't do an interview with him. From New York, I went to Canada and Chicago to be on Oprah's show. Like most of the TV people who interviewed me, she was nice and kind, but it's not like these people want to hang out with you after the show or get an ice cream sundae. It's more of a hello, goodbye type thing, but I didn't really have any expectations, so I wasn't disappointed. It never occurred to me at the time, but when you go on all these TV shows, there are millions of people who are watching you at home, and they suddenly feel like you have just come into their house and they know you. You are an instant celebrity, just like that. For me, the whole thing about being recognized, being famous, is both a blessing and a curse. I like that my life can serve as an encouragement to people. I like that I can tell people about Christ. Then there are the negatives. All the activity and attention gets in the way of me being able to do things that I want to do. For example, if I just want to go out and be with my friends, it becomes hard when strangers come up and want to meet me. I feel like I have to be nice to them, but to be honest, sometimes I just want to ignore them. Doing interviews cuts into my being able to go to surf contests or camp with my church or hang out with my friends. I even got way behind on my schoolwork because of all the things I was doing and had to cram and work really hard to catch up. I know that God has put me in a place where I have a chance to be of help to people all over the world. And I constantly have to remind myself 10 times a day, if not, my brothers remind me, my parents remind me, that this isn't just about me being in the spotlight. There's a greater good here. So if that means I have to make a few sacrifices or give a gazillion interviews, then it's worth it. No autographs, please. Sarah Hill and I were given first-class seats on the 6-hour flight from Kauai to LA. It's pretty brutal being cooped up on a plane that long, and we hardly slept a wink. But we made the trip because I'd been invited to give out Dove Awards at the Gospel Music Association, the Grammys for Christian music. I was psyched. Sarah suddenly elbowed me in the ribs. "Hey, Patrick Swayze is sitting right near us," she whispered. "He keeps glancing at you. I think he knows who you are." That made me laugh out loud. Patrick Swayze knows me? "He keeps looking back at you," she insisted. "You want me to give you a piece of paper and a pen? You could ask for his autograph." "No," I replied. "Why not?" Sarah asked anxiously. "Because I get tired of people asking me for my autograph," I told her.